All right, so did you have any success in converting the style right here? If you didn't, don't sweat it, because we're going to get a tremendous amount of practice with JSX over time throughout this entire course. So I'm going to go ahead and convert the inline style right here to the appropriate JSX format instead. To do so, I'm going to first copy the entire button tag and put it on the line right underneath it, just so you can see the before and after practice. All right, so I'm going to first begin by taking off the double quote over here and replacing it with 2 curly braces. Then I'll do the same thing on the right-hand side as well. Next up, I'm going to remove the semicolons inside there, and then separate each of the key value properties with a string. Remember, this inner curly brace right here represents a JavaScript object, so we need to make sure that it has the appropriate syntax for a JavaScript object. Next up, I'm going to look at the different property names and find any location where we have a compound property style. So that would be right here. We have background dash color. I'll then remove the dash and capitalize the letter right after it. And then finally, the very last step, and this one is a little bit confusing because I didn't very directly mention it, we need to make sure that these values are wrapped in a string. And so I'm going to wrap it with a single quote like so. Okay, so that's it. That's how we would update that HTML inline style to be the equivalent JSX. Now I can save this. I'll leave both buttons in here just to make sure that they both work. Actually, I shouldn't say that. This first button is still going to continue to throw an error, so I'm going to delete that one. And then I'll save this file, and I'll flip back over to my browser and see how we're doing. Perfect. So I now see the button is blue with white text. Now, one thing I want to address very quickly, you might have noticed that for these values right here of blue and white, I used single quotes, whereas for all the JSX, I use double quotes instead. So this is a little bit of community convention. Well, half community convention and half requirement of JSX. First off, with JSX, we are supposed to use double quotes anytime that we want to indicate a string. So in all these locations here, like label, name, text, we are supposed to use double quotes. But then for any non-JSX property, by convention in the JavaScript community, traditionally we make use of single quotes. But there are certainly tons of people, tons of engineers, tons of companies that prefer to use double quotes everywhere instead. So you can do it either way. It's totally up to you. At the end of the day, there's no difference right here if I put double quotes instead of single. I just wanted to highlight that you can make your own decision there and do whichever you prefer. Now I'm going to be following the convention of using double quotes for all of my JSX properties and then single quotes everywhere else. But again, do as you please. Okay, so this looks pretty good. Now let's take another quick pause. When we come back, we're going to start to talk about the next difference between JSX and HTML.